Hello, encouragers. I'm Rebekah Scott, wife, mother of 4, author, and owner and designer of Rebekah Scott Designs. I'm here to encourage you, to make you feel the I can do this spirit each and every day of our awesome journeys to fulfill our many important roles. I believe we are fully equipped to execute, and I will provide as much knowledge, practices, and systems I can to help you understand just what I know you can do. Execute. We got this.
Hello, encouragers. Today's episode I'm super excited about because maybe we can all avoid expensive mistakes. I don't know about you guys, but for me, most of the mistakes that I've made in business have been expensive. And so I'm trying to avoid those and help you guys iron through some of that while you're working through your side gig, or maybe now it's moved to your part-time gig, and then maybe it's your small business, or you've pulled the Band-Aid off and you're working on your own now. These are some mistakes that are most commonly made for small business owners or entrepreneurs in their first probably 1 to 5 years, I would say. So I have my very special guest, Clint Brown, who is also a business advisor to my company, Rebekah Scott Designs, and he has probably seen all these mistakes in magnitude and on a small scale too, and he's helped me know these mistakes well and learn from them as well. So please welcome Clint Brown. Thanks, Clint.
Hey, thanks for having me.
Yes, Clint, remind everybody your family, again, because we like to hear how you're doing entrepreneurism and what it is you do and what your family looks like.
Yeah, well, let's see here. My family, I'm 38 years old, and I've been married 17 years. So I got married when I was young. I have 4 children from ages 2 to 12, soon to be 3 and 13, but 4 kiddos. We homeschool 2 of the kiddos. Our house is utter chaos all the time. I run a company. I advise on other great companies, so it's very busy.
Yes. One of the funniest things Clint ever told me was, my house looks like a scene from Cops.
It does. It's just, when you have, I mean, anybody who's got a bunch of little kids, unless you're just like super OCD and can keep the house clean, like just the unfathomable amount of things a 2-year-old can imagine and do when you're on the phone, or like, you go in and you do the dishes and you come back and they've like Sharpied their sibling or some crazy thing. And that's just constant in our house, or at least it feels that way.
And especially when you're homeschooling too, you're living in it. So when you get to go to work at 8 and you return at 5, the house is remaining still. And so like stuff isn't undone. But when you work and live in it, it's like constant scene from Cops.
It is. It's, it's sort of like living in a psych ward or with like schizophrenic redecorators. Like everybody in the house thinks that everything should be someplace else than where it should be, and they just move it. So what was there 20 minutes ago is no longer there, and you got to go on the hunt for it.
Oh my gosh. This is not to say, and I will design a podcast around your wife, Katie. His wife, Katie, I have known for years and years throughout church, camp, and all these things. She is amazing. This is purely kid focused. This is
not commentary. I mean, any adult would experience the same thing in our house. It's just I have very intelligent kids who are very high energy, very curious, and man, they're just after it all the time.
Okay, so aside from our children, at least Clint was able to tell us what he does and what he advises on. What is the first mistake you see small business owners, entrepreneurs making in their businesses?
Well, I had sent you over a couple of notes just what this sort of popped into my mind, and I wrote down waiting for change. And I think that this concept of waiting for change illuminates an even deeper issue, which is owning the company's success, progress, failure. It's the ownership of it. And I don't mean legal ownership. I mean, if I were to ask you, why is the company not more successful? What I want you to say is me. I'm the reason the company's not more successful. I'm holding it back. I don't know enough to move it forward. I can't do more sales. Or it is so successful because of me and my team. And I think that where that manifests itself, if I were to walk into a business, and this happens to me frequently, maybe 2 or 3 times a week, I'm asked to come evaluate something. I went and did it last week for a brewery. And when they're waiting around for change, like they can describe like, I'm going to get going when this other thing happens, but when that other thing is, they talk about it like it's outside their control, right? Like when I have enough money, or when I get this document, or when my spouse gets on board, or when the bank document goes through, or when it's right, or and it's like, the time is now. Like it's your company. You need to move forward now. And so I think that sense that it's outside of you and it might manifest itself as waiting for change is probably the single biggest issue I see with people not having bigger goals, not accomplishing more, is that they think there's something outside of them that needs to happen first.
Yeah, and they're not, I would say, me, myself included in this, when I say we're allowing fear to stop movement.
Absolutely. And I think that's natural. So that means you're healthy. If you didn't have the fear, you might be, diagnosed psychopath or something. So that's a natural thing. You're feeling a natural biological reaction to the unknown, but you get to make a choice of who's going to change that. And I can tell you, if you're waiting for somebody else to change your circumstances, it's not going to happen. Not as an entrepreneur. I mean, unless you just happen to get the lotto ticket or something, you're going to have to do something to change your circumstances. So who you're waiting on is you.
Yeah. Which I think is empowering. Because me, I'm like, well, I can change that. I have a hard time, trying to change other people or that sort of thing. But if it's myself, I'm like, I can do that. Let's do it.
I think so. Becca, I think that where you're so good at that is you have a lot of experience in imposing self-changes. You're very experienced at, like, I want to be healthier. I want to do this as a mom better. I want to, you've done that for so many years that to you have a lot of confidence built up that you're capable of doing that. But for some people, they've never really had to make major life changes or major business changes to accomplish their goals. They've gone just as far as it's comfortable, and they're standing right on the edge of that comfortable cliff.
Okay.
And then they think the cliff is a mile to jump off of, and they need a parachute. It might only be a foot, but they've just not done that before. And I think that's where it takes some bold action. And you might have to have a friend or a business confidant or someone say, it's time to jump. It's time to take the leap.
Yeah, that's what I was just going to say. And how to avoid that was probably get somebody outside of yourself to politely tell you, hey, you're not moving anywhere. You're not changing because it's you. So let's get started.
Yeah, and I think that level of self-awareness is really difficult to show somebody until they're ready. I've got literally dealing with this afternoon an email series of somebody who's not ready to change, and I can tell them they're not ready to change, but nobody who thinks they're not ready to change thinks it's them. They think it's something else, and there's like this, right? It's sort of like pointing out that they're the problem, but they've already decided that they're not. So I think that level of self-awareness of giving yourself the space to say, am I holding this back? Mm-hmm. What's my part if and that's hard. That self-honesty can be really vulnerable, really challenging.
Yeah. Oh, for sure. For sure. So get people you love that can tell you honestly how to change. And I always think, I didn't always, but since I brought Clint and Lauren on in their business to help me foresee things, sometimes I tell myself, ooh, what would Clint say right now? Like, am I being comfortable? And that's why I don't want to answer this question, because I'm afraid that he's going to say, yeah, it actually is you, or what is. So make sure to develop self-awareness, which is also just being kind of a self-improvement junkie. And that's exactly what I am. And Clint, you would probably say the same thing. You read how many books on self-improvement, because I want to be able to make the change before it's pointed out to me. I want to beat him with a punch.
And I think that for me at least, Becca, and you could speak for you, but it still doesn't feel good. I mean, after reading 100 books or attending seminars, to have someone give you advice that's true and sort of punch you in the face with that advice, you don't go, oh, I feel so much better. You go, oh gosh, that hurt. That's so true. I want to puke,
Yes. For sure.
You don't, yes, but if you can see past that and say the backside of this moment of pain, of being uncomfortable, the backside of that is change. The backside of that is progress. The backside of that is motion forward. But you've got to be willing to go there. You've got, I had a friend who's a theater director, and I said, how do you get to the space of being a great actor? And he said, you have to lean into the discomfort. If you can't lean into the discomfort of acting, you'll never break through to the other side, because as soon as it becomes uncomfortable, you back up. And I think entrepreneurship is one of those things that's going to be uncomfortable. The question is, are you ready to lean into that discomfort? Because what you're wanting is on the other side of that.
Yeah. It's so funny you said that, because one of the words I said in the first year I worked with Alluvio was, well, what's the experience like? Uncomfortable. That's what it is. And they're like, ooh. And I'm like, no, that's what it is. You're going to learn all your mistakes. It's going to be raw and vulnerable, and you still won't learn all of your mistakes. But it is. It's uncomfortable because they are coming in to say politely, gently, with a hug, let's make change. So what is your, like, another mistake you see in companies?
I think one of the ones, again, the last one I gave you, the waiting for change, is a symptom. The next one is actually the root problem, and that is not having a vision. And where I pick up on that really quickly if I go into a business is I ask the team, what's this company about? What's our goal? And I get a million different answers.
Ooh, yeah.
Or I get the sort of confusion about what's important. They're unable to rank what's a big priority versus what's a small priority, right? Everything is exacerbated. And so it's not in, like when you parent, you might say, at the end of the day, I need respectful kids who love God and take care of their family. And so at any given moment on a Monday or a Tuesday, if they do something little, you go, oh, that's a little issue. It's not a big issue. Or you might have a little thing and say, no, that's a big issue. It's a hard issue in light of the overall goal. And I think that, like, this is the same sort of thing. When you don't have a vision, humans need vision. We're literally biologically created in our brain to work together with a common vision. And so when they don't have one, they're sort of like running around in the dark. I don't know. Have you ever had this experience, Becca? I know that with your crazy life, you probably don't get to travel much, but let's say you go to a hotel that you're unfamiliar with. You wake up in the middle of the night and you cannot remember where you're at or where the light switch is at, but you got to go to the bathroom. So you're sort of groping around in the dark, right? You're sort of like, where's the wall? Where's the bed in proximity? Because your bed, you remember because it's your house. But you don't remember the unfamiliar space, and that sort of groping around in the dark for the boundaries is when I feel that with a team. I say they're lacking vision here because they can't figure out, does this matter? Does this not matter? Should I be doing this? And I think that's a real challenge. Versus someone coming in and saying, hey, I'm going to build this company to $1 million or to $5 million and sell it, or we're going to retire, or we're going to franchise. Or we're going to change the world or help 1 million people or whatever the thing is. That not having a vision really can permeate a lot of other things.
Do you think it's important that we have to, like, strictly define the vision? Like, it has to be some big grandiose idea, even though we're like, I actually don't know that, I'm just saying that because it sounds really good. Do you think that happens too?
Well, give me a for instance.
For instance, I started making headbands. This is just an example. I started making headbands, and I am going to start selling them in Anthropology in the next year, and I'm going to still work my full-time job as a nurse. Like how do we, because I think when people say vision, when you start out, like how I started out was like, I want to stay home and raise my babies and sew. So I didn't really have a vision other than just make enough money to stay home, to not have my husband say, we both got to pull our weight. So in the beginning, my vision wasn't like this grandiose, I'm going to build a barn studio in the West Acres and gross X amount a year. That was not my vision when I started, but it was like, hey, I need to make $600 a month. Is it, does the scope of the vision matter? Is it just at least that there is a direction in where you or your team, if you're lucky enough to get to have a team as well, is going?
I think so. I mean, I think that let's say that we're playing horseshoes, and I set out the pole, and I don't know my horseshoe terminology for all your listeners who are horseshoe officials, and I'm going to butcher it,
I don't know.
right? But there's the stake. We set out the stakes, and then we have the shoes. And the stakes have to be a certain number of feet apart. I don't know what that is. Let's say it's 30 feet. I'm sure that I'm wrong, but let's say that it's 30. If I decided to set it 300 feet away because I'm going to prove a point, there's not a human that can throw it 300 feet. So failure is guaranteed because it's not even an option. It's ridiculous, right?
Yes.
If I set it for 3 feet, then what am I even doing? Right? I could trip and it goes 3 feet. You might need to set it to 30. You might need to set it to 30 feet. That's normal, but then push it 5 feet more, 10 feet more. So I think sometimes I think people create visions that are too big because it gives them an excuse of like, well, I couldn't do it, but no one else could, so I'm at least as good as everybody else.
Oh my gosh, that's true.
Does that make sense?
Oh, yes, that's so.
Because you're like, well, even Oprah couldn't pull that off. Well, no human can. You're too far outside of reality.
Oh my!
And so
God,
it's a way to sort of default yourself as a winner, or to excuse your lack of accomplishing it. Right? Like you run, Becca, and if you said, I'm going to run a marathon in 1 hour, no, you're not.
No, I'm not.
No, because the fastest people on the planet are doing it in 2.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And so that's ridiculous. Now, if someone said, I want to run a marathon in under 4, that's doable. People do it every year at the Boston by the tens of thousands. Mm-hmm. And so some of that, I think, their vision says a lot about them. I think your vision should be visible. It's called a vision for a reason. We would have called it another word if we wanted something else, but you should be able to say it and I see a picture in my mind. You should be able to paint a picture for me of that future reality. Like, can you see this? Can you imagine this? And if the person you're telling it to, team member, spouse, client, says, no, I can't see that. I can't see you having a ladder from here to the planet Mars. Then you might need to go back to your vision and say, how do I make this accessible for other people? How do I help them get their brains wrapped around it? Does that make sense?
Absolutely. I think that not having a vision, it goes back to the old saying, and it's so cliche, is that if you aim at nothing, you'll hit it every time. So this is wonderful. But let's have a vision for where you want to go. And if vision is too lofty of a word, just have a goal, a common goal that you and your team will meet.
Yeah, if you had a goal, but you know what? Maybe an easy sort of hack for that is a goal plus a feeling. Like, I'm going to get here and it's going to be rewarding. I'm going to feel like I'm accomplishing my purpose. Someone else's life's going to be better. Not just a dollar amount, but something a little juicier than that might get you closer to a vision. And some people are very much visionaries. They talk in vision all the time. Like, can't you imagine when we're living in this bigger house or we have 10 employees or whatever that thing is? Yeah. And they're not executors. Other people are so granular executors. They think vision people are just crazy dreamers.
I can directly think of people in my own life who just describe both of those things.
Yeah, and it's hard when they have to work together. Yeah. And vision people are very turned on by their ability to create a vision. So if you tell a vision person their vision sucks, then they're very squashed. Yeah. So that's not a way to deal with it. Yeah, I think that people do need to have a vision. And you know what, I say something like this is, and again, these are all things I actually ask people, but like, talk to me about this business a year from now. Let's say that we're sitting down for this same coffee appointment 1 year from now. Paint a picture of what will be true. And that's a pretty tangible amount of time, 1 year. They can sort of wrap their brain around how the business might grow. Okay. And then, talk to me about 5 years. And then I'll simply ask, like, what's the craziest this could ever get? How big could it get in your mind? Yeah. And you'll see people sort of say the thing they're scared of, like, well, I could sell this to a tech company, or I could retire, or it could make me $10 million. You can kind of see there. Yeah. But
all good. Okay. What's another one?
This one gets people in a lot of trouble. And I know because I have been terrible at the irony of the number 3, which is not knowing the numbers. The irony for me, Becca, is that I won the Math Olympics every year growing up. I'm the biggest number nerd you'll ever meet, ever. I used to beg for more math homework. I used to have my grandma buy me math worksheets for my Christmas present. I love numbers, right? But I somehow justified it in my mind or came up with an excuse that not knowing numbers prevented me from the responsibility of how good or how bad they were, right? So I could just be sort of victim to them without taking the ownership.
Oh my gosh! Say that again.
I'll use a better word. I abdicated my responsibility. I forewent the responsibility of knowing the numbers because I didn't want to deal with the truth of what they were. That I was doing good or I was doing bad. And if I didn't know them, then I could just sort of blindly go forward and say, well, it must be going well, even though my checking account was being drained or I wasn't turning a profit. Mm-hmm. And the truth, man, it's just so vulnerable. I mean, it's sort of like, I had my dad's friend growing up suffered with obesity severely. He came from an unhealthy family and was just this really overweight kid. An overweight adult, and he went to the doctor, and his doctor got in his face and said, here's the deal. No one ever has said this to you. I'm going to say it to you. You're fat, and you're going to die if you don't change your behavior. And that sort of vulnerability is really hard as humans. And I think that but we need it. He needed it, and he changed his lifestyle because of that. Because someone was confident enough and loved him enough to say, if no one else is going to say this, I'm going to say it to you. And I think that your numbers are sort of that way because the numbers there's no feelings. It's just, Becca, you have money in checking or you don't. You have high sales or you don't. It's just numbers.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think that that's something that gets you in a lot of trouble. As you've scaled your business, the numbers become really critical. I don't know how you can grow without at some point knowing your numbers. I can't figure it out.
I don't think you can. I mean,
because it does become a math problem.
It becomes a math problem and it becomes a growth problem. So you can have all this growth, but not know your numbers. And so when people ask you like, hey, how's the business going? Well, it's going really good. I got a lot of coming in, but then all of a sudden you're like, why do I have so much going out? And you're not doing the math of like your brain was saying, hey, we make enough now. Yeah, we can buy that subscription, and yeah, we can buy that equipment, and we can hire another one. But you don't actually know your numbers. You just screwed yourself and backed yourself up a whole year because you let so much come out because you thought so much was coming in. But if you had more control of your numbers, which is exactly the stage I'm in right now with my own business, I know to a penny how much the thank you card costs at 16 cents. So I'm not giving a 16-cent card to a customer that's a super fan who already knows how to wash my bags.
Yeah.
Like you get to that point. And the thing is, if I could tell anybody anything, the most powerful thing to me of these mistakes was just this one, knowing the numbers. Because of the empowerment I feel when I know I'm making the right choice and not so many questions. Because as entrepreneurs, we face every day all these questions, because we're creating something that possibly hasn't been created. And so knowing the numbers allows me to be really confident with, yes, I can in fact buy the industrial serger because I need it, because it will shave off this much time, which saves me this much pain, this person to do it, and saves myself this much time. Like knowing the numbers will drastically change your business. And it's the one probably mistake on this that everybody's going to go, I'm going to ignore that for now. So this is your warning, everybody. This is the one you hyper need to know. You need to know your numbers.
And I'll tell you how you can tell if you're ignoring your numbers. Next time you go to the grocery store, take a piece of paper and cover the dash of your car. Cover the speedometer and the gas gauge. Cover it up so you can't see it. And I want you to drive to the store and tell me how confident you feel. And is that how it feels running your business?
Oh, wow.
Are you running it with no dashboard? You have no idea. And I'll tell you what, I've been driving a long time, but if you cover up my speedometer, it's scary. You can't tell if you're doing 35 or 45 or going through a school zone at 15. You think you know, but you don't. And you're going to constantly be like, am I going too fast? Am I going too slow? And a lot of people, they talk as though they're driving their car with no dashboard. And that's because they're not looking at their numbers.
And looking at your numbers you can do it on all kinds of different fields. For me personally, I decided I do not know my numbers enough. So I made a monthly date with my accountant, and she would look over, and at that time it was a bookkeeper. She would look over I don't even know what they're called, Clint, but I do know my numbers. Like I would look at my financials, and she would say, okay, here's what you're spending on hardware. Here's what you're spending on fabric. Here's what you're spending on payroll. And here's what you're spending in taxes. And I would go, okay, I learned that today. And then the next month I would be like, okay, but what do these numbers mean? Like, am I paying too much tax? Am I paying too much payroll? And she would go, okay, let's take a look at that. And you had to look back. So you got to look back at numbers from the year before. And I have made decisions in the last 6 weeks particularly that I'm like, oh, thank goodness I know my numbers. Thank goodness. So, yeah. Any other thing on knowing your numbers?
Well, I think that there's two pieces to it. You need to be able to know what in the world we're talking about, right? Like, so let's talk about a vehicle. You have your speedometer. You should be able to, as a driver, look at the speedometer and tell if you're speeding, right? You see the sign as you pass on the street, it says 45. You look at your speedometer, you're doing 37. You should be able to say, I'm going under the speed limit. The second step is, can you change the speedometer? Do you know how to speed it up or slow it down? And I think where the real empowerment comes, and the empowerment I experienced from you was not only what in the world are these numbers and where should they be, but how do I change it? How do I make it go up and how do I make it go down?
Ooh, yeah,
and as soon as you figured that out, you were off to the races because you were like, oh my God, I get it. I can make it go faster, slower, spend more, spend less.
True.
Yeah.
Yes. And also, I would say, because I love promoting other businesses, you can hire financial coaches, and I highly recommend it because they can teach you more and help you avoid more of these mistakes. Make sure that you've done your math, you've asked other people for references. But financial coaches, I have one right now she actually lives in New Jersey after a book I read, and she's been amazing. You are going to pay for it, but knowing your numbers pays your business back.
Well, and I think once you get to a certain size, let's say once the business gets over about $100,000 a year, your paycheck, the Rebekah Scott paycheck where you write yourself a check, literally is impacted directly by you knowing your numbers.
Yeah.
It impacts the owner's paycheck. So if you want that personal incentive, if you don't think you're making enough, it's because you don't know your numbers.
Yeah. Well, and that feeling you go when you do actually cash a check that you paid to yourself and you're like, I don't know if I feel good about this.
Yeah, hope this works.
You will not have that feeling. Can you imagine, you guys? You wouldn't have the feeling. You'd be like, oh, wait, this is what I'm supposed to be doing. At one point, you can only love it so much, but you do want to pay yourself.
Yeah.
Because usually your spouse is like, this is a good time, but when do we get paid? Yeah.
Yeah. I got a quick tip, Becca, for the people who are just sort of growing their young business, maybe making under $100,000 a year.
Okay.
Is I would cash whatever amount you need to make probably at least $1,000 a month in your business before you really got any traction.
Okay.
But when you can, I would see if either weekly, every other week, or once a month, you can get $100 bill out of your business and give it to your partner and say, thank you for putting up with this. Here's some of the fruits of the labor. I know it's not much. I'm bringing it to you to prove that it works. And give them the cash. Say, I don't care what you do with it. Like buy yourself shoes, take a yoga class, let's go out to dinner. I don't care. But take them the $100 and say, I appreciate you letting me figure this out. And so here's another $100 to prove to you the business spits out cash. And it will make a huge difference because they're so disconnected from your crazies. And you keep saying it's going to be great and it's going to retire, and they don't see anything.
Right. And the moment
give them that $100 bill and thank them.
That is so smart. I love that tip.
It's so simple. Like if you go, like Becca, you do shows. When you do shows, come back from the show and set aside some cash, whatever makes sense for your business, and give it to your husband and say, thank you for letting me go do this. I made cash. Here's some of it for you. It's not a lot, but stick it in your pocket. It's yours. Thank you. And you cannot believe what a difference that will make to them.
This is going to be huge. I'm going to do this for Nick, and he's going to be like, hey, can you apply for more shows?
Yeah, exactly. You know what's funny? Let's say, Becky, you'd have a huge show and you make tens of thousands of dollars. I have no idea what you make at a show, but it's just massive and you make so much money. You come home and give him $100. He doesn't care about the ratio between the $100 and the $20,000. He just knows that, I gave up my wife. She said she was going to make cash, and here's cash. It worked.
Yeah.
He's not going to become a mathematician on you. He's just closing the loop.
Yeah. Oh, gosh, that is awesome. Oh, I can't wait for entrepreneurs. You guys better write me back when you have tried this and let me know your partner's reaction. This is going to be fun.
Yeah, watch the look on Nick's face. He's going to be like, what?
I'll take a picture of him.
Perfect.
Ooh, awesome. Okay, and another one is, which is so true.
That you asked me for if I had a couple, and I had four, and so the fourth one is not knowing the customer, and this gets a little bit deeper. Mm-hmm. When you get going, you get some traction. So let's say the lady, you gave the example of the lady making hair bows and selling them to Anthropology. Let's say you have a product, your girlfriends like it, then you start selling more of them, and then you get your first big order. And then you're just go. And you're so busy sewing and shipping that you don't even know what day it is. You forgot to shower. When you've gone through that period, oftentimes that'll continue. And then as you diversify your customers, in other words, you get more and more of them, you forget that you're in the business of serving all these varied people. Yeah. And you've got to know the customer. And when your business gets big, especially if e-commerce is involved, you can't see their face. You can't look in the whites of their eyes. You don't know if that's an old lady or a young guy or a teenager or grandma. You don't have any idea. It's just an email and some money and people saying, send me product. And you've got to become just fierce about knowing your customer, being a student of who is this that you wake up every day to serve and bring value to.
How do we know them?
Well, I think that on a simple level, I'll tell you this sounds so silly, and I do it, and my clients are always shocked. I go, give me the names of your top 10 customers, and they always can. They always know. Oh, like Sarah always orders from me, or John is our best customer. Good, give me their phone number. I'll call them. And I'll go, John or Sarah, you know what? You're the best customer of Rebekah Scott. And who are you? Like, what are you into? What's your thing? What makes you tick? And I have some questions I ask. We call it an avatar, or if you're an advertising person, maybe a persona. But it's basically like, how come you keep giving us money? How come you keep shopping with us? How can we do it better? Do you have kids? Are you married? Do you go to church? I mean, get to know these people. These people are literally feeding your children, and you don't know them. And so,
good perspective.
But as the company grows in size, you can become more and more disconnected from your customer. And Becca, you've been very fortunate that you've been able to still do shows at your size. But if the day comes where you can never go to a show, you're going to feel really out of touch. That's the language I hear.
Yes.
They just go, I just need to see their excitement, or I need to see how they wear it. And that's, you've operated on that economy for so long. But getting to know them, and I think that the real key is, why do they buy from you?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
That's the most important. Like, why? Why does someone spend money with Rebekah Scott Designs? Mm-hmm. Is it just, they might say, because it's cute. Really, cute is enough to get you to spend money. I could show you a cute puppy and you would spend the money. Or does it meet other needs? Is it a status symbol? Does it say something about your fashion or sensibility or motherhood? Mm-hmm. And you got to dig a little bit sometimes to figure this out. But who else other than you should be the most expert on your customers? It's you. And I don't know how you're ever going to like Facebook advertising will drive you nutty if you don't know your customers. Paying for shows and booths will drive you nutty if you don't know your customers.
Oh yeah.
You're just going to feel like you're just shooting into the dark, hoping you hit somebody.
Yeah. Okay. I have a funny example of this exact thing. I started having conceal pocket purses. So I have a hidden pocket in the back of some of my purses. And in order to kind of start launching it, which was per Clint's question one time, he's like, hey, have you ever thought about making a conceal pocket purse? And I was like, yeah, sure, why not? And the next week he showed up and I had one for him. And he was like, sweet, let's try this out. So I tried it out and I was like, how am I going to debut this? Because I feel like we have, and we also have probably sensitive listeners too on this subject. You can conceal whatever you want. You guys can do the math of whatever you want to conceal. I crack up when I find out what people try to conceal in these pockets. So I thought it might be a good idea to go to one of the local gun shows where they do trades and new sales and all this. Well, I show up and I knew it wasn't going to be women's booths there. I did know that it was going to be male vendors, but I thought that they would at least bring their wives. I bet the ratio of men to women was like 200-4. So I didn't sell very many because they don't want to buy a purse because it's a personal item for their wife. And so that's one of those, like, I did know my customer, but I was kind of fishing. So here I paid a booth fee, time away from my family, to learn, okay, whoever this customer is, this is not the route to pursue them. And so then asking more questions, I went back to email, which just tends to be our biggest indicator of who our customer is like our email and then our Facebook fans, because the fans, you can kind of generalize what their ages are and stuff. And so went back to that. And since then, we've had great success with it. But that is a good example of, like, I probably could have thought that through better, that the mom of two is not going to the gun show on a Saturday. She's going to Taekwondo.
Yeah, and I think that, it's funny, we're very willing to have this behavior in other settings. Let me give you two other settings. One, athletes, especially as you get up into high school ball and beyond, will spend an obsessive amount of time studying the opponent, right? They'll learn that this team is fast, this team is slow, you got to watch out for this player, they're going to use this tactic. And we'll set aside time, hours, watch game footage, and that seems okay to us, but we won't give ourselves 20 minutes in a month to get to know our customer. Or if you or your spouse hunts or fishes, sportsmen will obsess like nobody's business on what type of gun, what type of fishing rod, what type of clothing, what type of gear, what are their breeding habits, what do they eat, what time of day, is the weather right? I mean, these old hunters in South Dakota will be like, the barometric pressure is too low, I'm not going pheasant hunting. Like, who knows that stuff, right? But for them, it's important. So they will study to the nth degree to go shoot a prairie chicken. And we go, well, that's normal. They want to kill a chicken who runs around in the prairie, or they want to get a deer, or they want to catch a trout or whatever. And then we go, yeah, of course you would do that. You're hunting. But then we own a business that feeds our family. And we won't even give ourselves an hour, a half hour, a whole day, God forbid, an entire day to be a better student of who it is we're trying to find more of. I think it doesn't make sense. And that can be really challenging. The bigger you get, the better of a student you need to be as to who your customer is.
And I would also say that not knowing your customer sometimes isn't just ignorance. Sometimes it's a fear of feedback.
Yeah.
You're afraid that if you know your customer, they're going to say, I really like you, but can you do more zippers? Mm-hmm. And that's a direct case of my own business. And I'm like, I don't want to know them because I don't want to know what the feedback is. And you're just so afraid that they're going to tell you they actually don't like you that much, but they only like this. And that's not true. That is all just the things in our head. But I think that plays a big part about why we don't want to know our customers. But the sooner I got over that, the way quicker I grew my business, because the actual feedback was, oh my gosh, I love you so much. I'm going to buy 6 more bags. But hey, if you had a zipper bag, I'd totally buy one of those too. It wasn't the first scenario where they're like, you don't do any zippers, so I don't buy from you. It was the second scenario almost 90% of the time.
Yeah, and I think that vulnerability is rough because you want to believe that you're right because you've risked your reputation on it, and you want to believe you're right. And anybody that might get in the way of that, you prevent against, but that is going to keep you from winning. That's going to, I ask my clients, like, do you want to be right or do you want to win? Because they're not the same thing.
Oh.
You could be right? Be right in your own mind. Play the game all by yourself and be right by yourself. I have little kids who are fiercely competitive. My son, I'm like, you want to be right? Be right. You're just not going to have anybody to play chess with you. Or if you want to compete, you're going to have to give and take a little bit. You're going to have to dance with somebody else on this. And I think that's all of these sort of come back to that first point, which is really the who's in charge here? Are you willing to admit that things are the way they are because of you? And that's knowing your numbers, that's having a vision, or that's not knowing the customer. And I think that you're so right, Becca, that people so fear the negative feedback. Mm-hmm. But they're not going to go forward, guys. That's how you change. Think back to when you were a kid and you had growing pains. If you didn't have growing pains, you'd still be 4 foot tall. It's just how it works. You have to go through it.
Yeah. And partly how I would get over it is I'm like, okay, let's do them all at once. So let's just open this can. Let's get all the feedback we possibly can, and then I'll dissect it and work on each one of them individually. And now, because of the way that I do things, and you may be one of those persons that just dips your toes in, I just do the cannonball and get it over with. It was just so freeing. I'm like, oh, okay. Yeah. Hey, we're not too bad. Let's tackle the next problem.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I think what's happened there is do you see that you're face-to-face with your customer and you're saying, I'm right, pay me this amount of money for this product because it's perfect for your needs. And the customer says, no, it's not. In which case you're just battling your customers, and I'll let you know the customer's going to win because they're the ones with the money in their hand, right? They'll just say, no, you're not, and they'll walk away. Or are you going to say, my job is to help you discover the right product for you. I'm going to come alongside you, stand shoulder to shoulder, and you tell me what crazy scenario has to be true for you to be excited about my product. And then you're helping them make a great purchase decision, which they're very eager to do, and they'll love you for it. But if you want to be right, you're not going to grow.
Yeah, well, that's the thing that I was doing in the beginning is just trying to sell it to them as fast as possible. Not that I wanted to take their money because I was worried they would have feedback, but now I'm like, no, I feel much more confident taking their money for a product that I know is worth every penny when I have narrowed down to, okay, you said you are a business professional and you have 2 little ones. You do not want to go with a Laura. If you are still every once in a while carrying around a pull-up and a dinosaur, you're going to want to go with Phoebe, and I'll tell you why. And so me knowing more about my product and knowing more about the customers allowed me to more confidently take their money knowing that I was giving them full value for what they were paying for.
Yeah, they're coming to you as an expert to get the right product. And yeah, if you say, look, I sold these to 4,000 moms, I can tell you, you're going to love this. Then they go, phew, I made the purchase decision today.
Yeah, and it's so interesting because sometimes I've said no to them. They'll say, do you think I would like a Rozzy? And a Rozzy is a very athletic-looking bag, and it's just a very event-type bag. It's not your everyday. So they'll tell me what they do and everything. I'm like, I don't think that one is going to be a good fit for you. So I've even turned down because I know that in the end, the feedback would be like, hey, I never did use this. So.
Yeah, and you would much rather, your reputation is built on what they're saying when you're not standing there in front of them. Absolutely. So they're going to go home and do something with your product, and what are they going to turn around and tell their friends? That is, the more you know them, and this is true, these are just life lessons that could really work anywhere. This could work in your family too. The more you know your spouse, the more you know your kids, you name Absolutely. It. This is just human stuff. So.
Sure. Awesome. Okay, so the 4 things we talked about was waiting for change, not having a vision, not knowing the numbers, and not knowing the customers. If we can learn as much as we can from this podcast and from what Clint has so awesomely shared with us, we could avoid a lot of expensive mistakes and a lot of heartache personally by just listening up here. Do you have anything to say in closing, Clint?
Well, I think that, my thought is someone needs to go have an honest conversation with themselves, and they need to say, do I really want a different future? And if so, what am I going to do? How am I going to change first in order to get that different future? And if you're not willing to have a different future, then just enjoy the one you're in, because you're going to stay there. And if you are doing something different, then you just have to be willing to move forward and figure out how are you going to adjust? What are you going to learn? How are you going to be empowered so that you can take your project or your family or your business further? So I think it probably starts with an honest conversation with yourself.
Absolutely. And that is free. So go ahead and have that conversation, everybody. Awesome. Thanks for joining us, Clint. I will have you on again, I am sure. Tell your wife and your children it's time for them to come out here for board games.
I will, absolutely.
Okay. Thanks, encouragers. Until the next time, we got this.
Hey, encouragers, the book is printed and it's ready to get into your arms. It's called Equipped to Execute, Guiding Moms to Joyfully Impact Family and Business. I tell you, this book, labor of love, it's a super quick read. You could probably read it in a couple hours or so, but it's really helpful to kind of get that momentum going. If you're feeling overwhelmed, if you've had the scene where you're crying because there's no way you can meet all the roles in your life, I have been there. I've so been there. But I'm not there anymore. And I know how you can get out of that slump and start executing on all the things that God has equipped you to do. You can pick up the book at equippedtoexecute.com, also on my website at shoprsd.com, and it's also available on Amazon. So check out those sites. And also, side note, I just recorded the audio version, so you'll be able to listen to this on your way to work. Even with the audio version, though, I highly suggest buying it. It's $20 because you treat it as a workbook. I've got 5 questions at the end of each chapter to help you with starting that business or continue with that business with much more success and much more clarity on how to raise your family and your business at the same time. We got this, encouragers. Thank you for tuning in, encouragers. Remember to subscribe so it's automatically on your phone. We got this, encouragers.